Listen in Colour. Hi everybody, welcome to Listen in Colour with me, Rachel Walker-Mason. Now today I'm going to review something that I haven't seen yet. So there's been this very controversial new version of Jesus Christ Superstar written by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, and it came out in like the 70s, so it's been around forever. And Jesus has always been played by a man until now. And it's our very own Elphaba, Cynthia Erivo, who is teeny tiny and gorgeous, epic voice. And my goodness, has this caused major trauma to people, because people are like, this is outrageous. But that role is so high, you have to be like a full-on super tenor to sing that role. And for a lot of guys, it's too high. So let's see how she does with it. So this is Cynthia singing Gethsemane, which I think is one of the best songs in musical theatre. It is epic. Do you guys know this one? It's so good. I've watched pretty much every version there's ever been of it with all the different singers. And so this will be interesting to see how Cynthia handles such a big, challenging song.
Stay away with me, Peter, John, James. Will none of you wait with me, Peter, John, James.
Oh, before we even get into the main song, this is kind of the prelude to the song. It kind of warms us up into the song. So the disciples have just fallen asleep after the Last Supper, and they said they'd stay awake with Jesus, but they did not. And I love the way she's singing this. Like, she really knows how to use her voice and not over sing things, as we know she's got this massive, powerful voice, but how she's basically speaking it, Peter, John, James. And she does those, when she calls the names out, she does that different, on those two occasions, which is perfect, because they always say to do that. If you've got the same line twice, do something different with it, say something different with it each time. And so even before we get into the main part of the song, she's wowing me. She's just got all the skills, this girl, isn't she? Here we go.
I only want to say, if there is a way, take this cup away from me, for I don't want to taste its poison, feel it burn me. I have changed, I'm not as sure as when we started then. I was inspired.
It's interesting hearing a woman sing this, because it feels quite mid-range in her voice here, da, 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 da. And then I'm thinking, blimey, when we get to the where should I die, all the really, really high bits, is she going to have enough space at the top of her voice for that, or is she going to drop down an octave? Because I don't think that will be as effective if you don't do the huge octave leap. That's the kind of moment I wait for. So it's going to be interesting to see how she does this, because when it's a man singing the role of Jesus, this all feels kind of more slightly low range, like it's kind of zero effort. So it's quite interesting. I didn't know whether they were going to change the key. So at this point, Cynthia sung the opening section. She's in very full voice. It's lovely. But other actors have done that very differently, handled that opening section very differently. So let's have a look at some, do a bit of compare and contrast. And we'll have a look first at Steve Balsamo and his version.
Take this cup away from me, for I don't want to taste its poison, feel it burn me. I have changed, I'm not as sure as when we started.
So here, Steve Balsamo is really under singing it at the beginning. It's almost as if he's kind of thinking about it in his own head. So you feel this real journey going through this song, because it's like he's really thinking, I only want to say if there is a way. So it really feels like it's the first time he's having these thoughts, which in musical theatre is how we're meant to make everything sound. Like the song is our thought that's just occurring to us at that point, which is really hard to do when you do 8 shows a week for however many weeks and however many years. But he makes it sound very realistic, as if he's only just started thinking this, and it's not a thought he's really considered yet, and so he's really under singing it. He's not finishing every line with vibrato. He really throws some of them away as a kind of sort of a half-finished thought. And it's lovely because then you've got loads of room to build up to the later bits in the song, because it's quite a long song, quite a big thing. Cynthia kind of comes right out the gate fighting, like, here we are. And she's not singing loudly at the beginning, but it sits higher in her voice, so she's already got more presence in the vocal. So it's 2 different approaches here.
I only want to say, if there is a way, take this car away from me, for I don't want to taste its poison, feel it burn me. I have changed. I'm not as sure as when we started.
Does a lovely little flip in his voice there. So rather than belting that or staying in a kind of mixed voice, he just flips completely into falsetto, and with such control. That is so nice. I remember the first time I heard that, I thought, ooh, that bodes well. Gorgeous. I love that opening. He's really under singing it as well, so it makes that note really pop.
I only want to say, if there is a way, take this cup away from me, for I don't want to taste its poison, feel it burn me. I have changed.
So Ted Neeley sings this fairly, not exactly spoken. The first line, he's quite behind the beat. He's making that choice to come in quite pensively. I only want to say, so he's just behind the beat, which is quite a nice choice. And then the take this cup away from me, he does just push that line a bit more, so it's in slightly more full voice. And I think that works, and then he pulls it back again for I don't want to taste its poison. So it's still quite undersung compared to how he does things later in the song. What do you think? You like it? Not sure? We'll give her a chance. I want her to get to the big moments.
Now I'm sad and tired. Listen, surely I've exceeded expectations. Tried for 3 years, seems like 30. Could you ask as much from any other man? But if I die, see us all go through and do the things you ask of me. Let them hate me, hit me, hurt me, nail me to the tree. I want to know, my God. I want to know, my God.
Okay, I mean, she's singing it beautifully because there's nothing she can't sing, is there? She's just amazing. If you heard her sing jazz and things, God, she's just amazing. So far, I haven't heard as many colours in her voice that I have in other versions. So it's in a comfortable range for her, and she's just sort of singing it. I like it to be less pretty than that, and have sort of more edge. So like she's really, so the characters are really thinking about what they're singing. Would you ask as much from any other man, rather than would you ask as much from any other man? It's a little bit pretty for me. This is the moment where Jesus literally sweats blood. It's so horrifying and stressful, and he's talking to God and he doesn't know if God's listening. The whole thing is kind of impossible for humans to understand, but I don't know, so far it feels a bit polite. And it is at the end of a very long show where the role of Jesus is really hard. There's so much get out screaming and stuff. There's a load of screamo tenor kind of stuff in there. It's one of the first like big rock musicals where singers could do that, and they often had like rock vocalists come and do that role because it's not a traditionally musical theatre role. But yeah, so I mean, and this is live. Obviously, she's doing this live. Okay, so far not sure, not completely sold. Let's see what she does next.
I wanna see my God. I wanna see my God. Why I should die? Will I be more noticed than I ever was before? Will the things I've said and done matter anymore? I have to know my Lord. Have to know, I have to know my Lord. I have to see my Lord. I have to see my Lord. If I die, what will be my reward? If I die, what will be my reward? Have to know
Comes the big bit.
have to know my Lord.
Yeah, so she's not going up the octave, she's staying in exactly way rather than way, going all the way up there, which would be incredibly high for a girl. So it doesn't have that lift that it would if it's a male kind of tenor or high baritone singing it, where you go, it's like being electrocuted. So it's still really good, and she's doing a great job. But that's the moment when it's just full body goosebumps, and she's not doing that because she's a girl, so she can't do that big jump without it being like excruciatingly high for us to listen to. So here we're building up to the big moment, and Steve does go up the octave into that like rock scream. It's really interesting to watch how he builds to it. So he's still on the I'd have to know. He's still building. He's not at full voice here, whereas Cynthia's really going for it here, which gives there less of a mountain to climb to get to the top. But it sits very differently in her voice. It's already at a kind of a belting point for her, whereas for Steve, this is still kind of, you know, I can sing it like this. So it's very interesting when someone with a completely different voice type, a male, female, sings the same song, because your voice will hit different registers at different points that perhaps when they weren't intended. And so sometimes you get amazing things from that you wouldn't have expected. Glee was quite good at that, of males singing female songs and the other way around. And sometimes you go, oh, I didn't imagine that note being sung in that way. And sometimes you get these brilliant things, and sometimes it just doesn't quite hit the kind of big punchy points that you want it to, because it's just not where the voice has that power. So let's hear Steve do his what?
Have to see, I'd have to see
up.
my Lord. Have to see, I'd have to see my Lord. If I die, what would be my reward? If I die, what would be my reward? Have to know my Lord. Have to know my Lord. Why should I die? Why should I die? Can you show me now that I would not be killed in vain?
Oh, so good. It's just the explosion of that why, because Jesus is very contained. Most of the musical, he's very calm, he's mild, meek and mild, except the bit when he kicks people out of the temple and he gets a bit cross. But here, it's this like cry from the heart. He's terrified because it's going to be really painful and horrible, and he doesn't really know what's going to happen. And he's frightened. It's like a prisoner on death row. Like, you'd be frightened no matter what you'd done, you'd still be frightened. And this is, it really comes out, and he starts to cry. I don't know how he does that. I don't know how people manage to cry on stage in every performance. It's just, it's beyond me. And the way he does the "Will you show me now?" And he doesn't sing now, "Will you show me now?" in this beautiful way. It's "Will you show me now?" And he doesn't make it pretty there. And it's a really interesting choices of making the words work for you, really colouring those words and making them tell the story and not it just be pretty singing. Okay,
Would be my reward if I die. What would be my reward? Have to know, my Lord. Have to know, my Lord. Why do I die? Oh, why should I die? Can you show me now?
That's quite interesting. So you can hear his voice is quite tired there. And so I don't know whether he'd rehearsed going up the octave, but he certainly doesn't here. And he's singing it with more kind of gruffness. I don't know whether that was a choice or whether his voice was just a bit tired. But it's not bad. It's just different. And he's singing it very differently, and he's doing the ad-libs very differently. And I don't know whether his body he's putting a lot of energy in through his body language, and I don't know whether that's to make up for the fact that he's not able to sing it quite how he wants. It's quite interesting to see how people do a very different job with this.
My Lord, have to see my Lord. If I die, what will be my reward? If I die, what will be my reward? Have to know, I'd have to know my Lord. Have to know, I'd have to know my Lord. Why should I die? Oh, why should I die? Can you show me now that I would not be killed in vain?
Yeah, I love the way he does that. It's like right up there, and he's walked to the top of that little hill, and then just the full flinging out of the arms in a full. I can't quite do that here. I've got a shelf there. In the full kind of crucifix position, a sense of foreboding of what's going to happen tomorrow, which is quite a nice kind of symbolic moment there. Yeah, that was lovely. And then he brings it back down to, "Can you show me now?" And makes it more kind of frustrated and more speech quality. Yeah, that's lovely. But yeah, I love that moment when he goes up the octave. I mean, the very first time I heard that, I was like, whoa, men can sing really high. It's really good. Okay. And so here she's doing some different phrasing than the original, because it's da 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 da. But she's doing "show me na 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 na," this, which is really good. But she does it on every line, and then it stops being quite as special. It just sounds like that's how it is. So it's quite nice when someone does that on one line and then they do the next one slightly differently. So it's just having lots of different options. So she's doing this in her own way, and that is how she sings, and she's very much put her own vocal stamp on it, which I really appreciate. I think if she tried to sound too much like other people, then that wouldn't have been her. So it's interesting the choices she's making here, and obviously Andrew Lloyd Webber was quite happy because he's let her do this. So yeah, it's interesting to see the choices that actors make when they're singing such a big song. Like when she does stuff in Wicked, I'm pretty much on board with every choice she makes, because she really thinks about how would the characters say that, what do they mean, and maybe she's not thinking that as much here because it's more of a sung through musical, whereas Wicked's got talking in it, and she's being filmed this close in Wicked, whereas she's much further away in a theatre setting here, so it's a whole different animal really. Okay, let's carry on, see what she does. back.
I'll die. Just watch me now. See how I die. See
So she goes up. Okay, so some Jesuses hold that note for almost the entire section here. It's the really long note, and they usually do it up the octave. She did a nice job of that. It's this awkward bit in the song now where you've got no lyrics and you just have to sort of stand there. And I always think the way an actor handles a moment where they don't have any singing, but the music is still going and they have to come back in again, it's kind of how they tell the story without any words. All they've got is their acting here. They've got no more words to kind of fill in the gap. And so my favourite actors are the ones that mentally go on a journey in this gap, and you can see it on their faces. You can see them figuring their choices out. They're kind of figuring stuff out. That's my favourite kind of thing, where it's like a wordless journey in their mind, but you can see it on their faces. Obviously, we're not close enough to Cynthia Erivo to literally see her face, so maybe she is going through a mental journey here.
Then I was inspired. Now I'm sad and tired. After all, I tried for 3 years. See.
So what I think my, not exactly issue, but where I'm feeling with it is it doesn't have any darkness and light. It doesn't do enough up and down, whereas in the original version it obviously does, because this bit is usually na 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 na, it's down the octave, whereas she's doing it da 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 da, so it's just still exactly where it was before, and it feels thinner as a, not her vocal, she's singing it beautifully, but the whole texture of it doesn't feel as uppy and downy. It doesn't have that roller coaster feel. I love it when it goes back down the octave here, and Jesus is almost too broken to sing, so it's almost sort of, and I was inspired. It's so undersung because he's done the big singing and he's like, I'm just tired now, I've got nothing else. Where it still feels like she's got lots to give. So it's a very different choice of how to perform it, and I do appreciate that she's doing it her own way, and the audience there obviously seem to be loving it. If any of you saw it live, do let me know how it was, because people are cheering, they're obviously really enjoying it. And the rest of the cast for this are amazing. It's like Josh Gad and Adam Lambert and people like that who are just epic. And they're such good roles in this. Like Judas is an excellent role, another really, really high tenor part. So I love hearing people really being able to sing those roles. So yeah, she's made some different choices vocally with this, which, you know, they're her choices.
Watch me die. See how I die.
Into this. Here it comes. There's a back bend.
Then I was inspired. Now I'm sad and tired.
So the arc is very different in this. Cynthia may well have gone on an emotional journey like that after she finished singing the the big moment, but we couldn't see it as much because she's further away because she's obviously on stage, whereas Steve, they've got a camera like here so you can see it. But he sings a really long phrase over that bit and then has a little emotional journey, which ends with him kind of collapsing and crying, and then bringing the vocal right down to almost spoken. He's almost not singing, it's just sort of vaguely pitched. But we all know what the tune is by now because we've heard the tune a few times, whereas Cynthia just carries on singing because she's got a beautiful voice and it sounds lovely. But it's very interesting how the actors do very different things with the characterisation and what they think Jesus would have been feeling at that moment.
Is there a reason for you wanting me to die? You're far too keen on women now, but not so hot on why. All right, I'll die. Just watch me die. See how I die. See how I die. Watch me die. Watch me.
So he does that very different. He does hit the high note, but only for a couple of beats, and then comes off it, and he makes it seem it might have been a character choice to do that, and then sing some more ad libs. That was his choice, and I don't know whether his voice is tired or whether those are the choices he made, but he made them work. They certainly felt honest. They were good.
Just watch me die.
So over this section here, he doesn't sing at all. So that's the original version. He just says, "Just watch me die," and there's no "see how I die." Just isn't there. And so I'm not sure if it was added after this version, but he definitely doesn't do it. And they have this slightly bizarre, haunting slideshow of all these pictures of Jesus, and then there's close-ups of Jesus's nose, which is odd. But yes, and I love that this section, it slows the right down. In the other versions where they're singing over the top, they keep it the normal speed. I guess they don't want to drag it out for any longer than the people have to sing the really high note. But in this version, they can really stretch it out because he's not singing.
Then I was inspired. Now I'm sad and tired. After all, I've tried for 3 years. Seems like 90.
So here he's completely gone into speech quality and doing a kind of Rex Harrison moment where he doesn't actually sing the tune at all because we've already heard the tune, we know what it is, and he just speaks it, seems like 90. And so he can go really out of time with it because he has the pacing to get the rest of the lyrics in without having to sing. And it's a really nice moment because you've heard him do this epic singing, and to bring it right down to this, it just feels such a contrast that's really good for our ears in musical theatre, to hear contrast like that. We like that.
Seems like 19, more than ever, scared to finish what I started, what you started. I didn't start it, God, I will be done. Destroy your only
Oh, some lyrics changed. It used to be "God Thy will is hard, but you hold every card." Now it's "God Thy will be done, destroy your only son." That's interesting, because I always thought "Thy will is hard" is such an awkward line to sing. Whereas this one is slightly easier to, it is less uncomfortable to sing. Yeah.
God, thy will is hard, but you hold every card.
So let's see what John Legend does here. So this is the bit where there are different lyrics. I'm not sure when they changed, but
What I started.
let's see which lyrics he
What
sings.
you started. I didn't start it. God, thy will be done. Boy, your only son.
One of my friends saw the rehearsals for that apparently, and he said that during the rehearsals John Legend was absolutely fine. He could sing all the notes, no problem, but I think they'd possibly worked him too hard that day, because then when it came to the final performance he's really struggling, and some of that kind of exhaustion in his voice kind of works as a kind of character choice, because Jesus is tired by this point in the musical and in his actual life, but you can hear in some of John Legend's bits that his voice is really hanging on, and you just think, oh God, I hope he's okay, I hope he's going to make it to the end, because this song is hard and he wants to do a good job of it. See what he does at the end.
Why then am I scared to finish what I started? What you started, I didn't start it. God, thy will is hard, but you hold every card.
That's good. It's interesting watching all these different versions. So the Ted Neeley version here, so that's the one from the original film that's in the 70s, and God, we watched that so much in our house. The way he sings Gethsemane is so pained in a really good way, and so he looks like he's genuinely in pain, and of course the setting is literally Jerusalem, so it's set there, and I've been there and it is literally like that, all rocks and stuff, and it's amazing. He does it in that kind of ultimate rock tenor way, and one of my friends knows him from the original Broadway cast. She was also in the Broadway cast, and she's like, yeah, great guy, 8 shows a week, going out there singing those ridiculously high notes, which is incredible. And so yeah, the film is lovely. The film is the original 70s one. That I've seen some other ones that have been filmed in theatres where Jesus feels a little bit more polite and nicer and less angry at this point. Last bit, Cynthia. And that's exactly what Steve Balsamo does. Literally that identical phrasing of I've watched his version so many times that I know it to the letter, like how much he breathes in, where the tears come, all of it. And that is exactly all of that phrasing where she goes up, and that's lovely. It just gives extra dimension to it. That's the word I couldn't remember before. Dimension, not the uppy downy, dimension. And so her doing that, her coming down in her voice and then having space to go up, was just lovely. So yeah, let's have a look at Steve Balsamo doing that, and then you'll hear the identical phrasing, and that is my favourite example of phrasing in this. It's just so good.
I will drink your cup of poison, nail me to your cross and break me.
Cynthia does an exact replica of that and makes it sound beautiful in her voice. It's really interesting that that's not on the original score, as far as I know. It's not exactly that phrasing, and not exactly those notes. So she must have watched this at some point in her life, and she somehow digested that and used it. And it sounded lovely. I love it when Steve does that. So it's interesting to see which different parts people use and which they don't.
I will drink your cup of poison, nail me to your cross and break me, bleed me, beat me, till me take.
I will drink your cup of poison, nail me to your
So he phrases it very similarly to Steve and Cynthia. So yes, that's the going up, na, 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 which is quite a nice bit near the end, before it kind of dies back down. Yeah, it's lovely. It's really interesting to hear how completely differently all four sing it. And there's obviously hundreds of other versions. You've probably seen lots of different ones, amateur, professional, all kinds of different ones. And it's really interesting to hear how people make that song theirs and make it into their version of Jesus, and what that means to them and how vocally they can handle it, because it's a really hard song to sing. I've had to teach it a few times to students, and it's reserved for very talented students because it is so hard, and it's a really long sing. It's fairly relentless, that song. So afterwards you need to lie down, but Jesus doesn't get one at this point. He gets taken off for the pilot questioning bit and everything else. So it's a big role to play, this one. Let's watch the end, see what she does. Chords. Gorgeous. Good job, Cynthia. Good job. I don't think I knew what to expect, really, because it's a very whole different world with a woman playing that part. And one of my friends did a really good amateur version of it recently, and they had a woman playing Jesus. But in an amateur production of it, you could see that more, because it would be very hard in like Wokingham or somewhere to find someone who can sing high C's like that. You know, they're crazy high. But yeah, it's an interesting choice. And I think Lloyd Webber's making some interesting choices nowadays, with having Jamie Lloyd come and do lots of new versions of his existing shows, like Sunset Boulevard and Evita and things. And I think this is also part of Lloyd Webber's kind of cool revolution. And I'm not mad about it. Like, I'm all right. I'm okay with it. Like, Cynthia Erivo can kind of do whatever she wants, really. Like, she's amazing. And I'm always interested in seeing how other people take on a character and how they make that work for them, and how they vocally make it work, and, you know, character-wise. So I'm always really interested in that. So we've heard 4 different Jesuses here, who are all, even though they can sing the role beautifully, they're very different. They have different backgrounds, different musical theatre training, some of whom are not particularly musical theatre, but that makes their performance more interesting because they approach it very differently. Who is your favourite? Do you want to pick a favourite Jesus? That feels a bit risky, doesn't it? I would say my favourite is Steve Balsamo. Not just because he's my friend, but because I think his version is the perfect balance of immaculate singing and really truly capturing the character and the suffering and the turmoil that's going on in Jesus's mind at that point. Not everything sounds pretty, and it's not meant to. And I think he just captures that just to perfection. But what do you guys think? Let me know. What do you think of Cynthia's very new version? I know it's been controversial, having a girl playing Jesus, but I think she handled the role really well. And I think, yeah, that it probably brought a lot to that version, to have her with her very strong performance, her huge vocals. I imagine it brought a lot to that version of Jesus Christ Superstar. But yeah, go and check out all the other versions of Jesus Christ Superstar and Gethsemane if you want to fully nerd out like I do. And let me know who your favourite is, or which bits of which ones, or what you liked from this, or what you didn't like. Yeah, I love it. That's what I love about musical theatre. There are so many different interpretations, and sometimes the people with the prettiest voices aren't the best musical theatre performers. It's ones who've got interesting voices with a bit of edge, of people who are willing to sound a bit ugly at times. They often have the more interesting, usable musical theatre voices that are just more memorable. So it's really interesting to see. It's not all about pretty in musical theatre. Thanks ever so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and share the channel, share the video with anyone else that you think might like it, particularly if they're super into Lloyd Webber and Jesus Christ Superstar and Cynthia Erivo. Share away and send me some more of your suggestions for what you'd like me to review. If you'd like me to do any interviews with my friends who have played these roles, anything like that, I will see what I can do for you. Have a colourful day.